Hi there YouTube, welcome back to my channel. This is Lisa the PFJ here. I hope you're having a lovely Monday morning, afternoon, evening, night, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. It's been a little while since I last made a video, so thanks for waiting. I had a bit of an injury. I don't know if you may have heard from one of my previous videos. When I went on a trip for my birthday, I incurred an injury to my leg, which then resulted in me being out of action for a bit. And then once that started to get better, I started to have a few more illnesses in the aftermath. So put me out of action for a little bit. But I'm back feeling much better and ready to go again. Into a video that I really don't want to have to make. But here goes, because it's been my bread and butter up until this point, barring a few other videos about other subjects. So let's get back into our old friend, Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Powah. Okay, so I'm about a week late on this one, but for reasons I've just said, that's why I wanted to feel back to a bit more of 100% before I cracked on again. So here I am, ready to go. There was a special with the Canadian broadcasting service CBC, which I've been led to believe is Canada's equivalent to the BBC, which is Britain's government-funded broadcasting corporation, meaning that the money comes purely from funding from the tax, or in Britain's case, licence payer. It was a series of interviews with various members of the cast of this thing, and the thing's a goldmine for everything confirming everything that most true Tolkien fans have suspected from pretty much the moment that Amazon announced that they were going to be making and releasing this, and that it wasn't going to be faithful entirely or at all to Tolkien's original works. They were going to have very little to work based on, given the fact that they don't have access or the rights to much of Tolkien's works, barring appendices and letters. And there would be significant representation in the show as well, which would be something that the makers would try and spin as being a good thing, but most of the fandom smelt shit from a mile off and knew that they were going to be using it for much more nefarious reasons, shall we say. So these interviews, albeit that I'll admit I don't know how much of footage there is of these guys being interviewed. All I got from was a couple of articles that I read, one from CBC itself and another one from another website. I think it might have been Bounded Into Comics, which was where I initially picked up from, because Bounded Into Comics, even though they have their biases, which I think they're pretty honest about, tend to tell you the facts more freely than other outlets might. So yeah, and the only footage I saw was, I'd say, a grand total of about maybe 10 minutes of some of these guys talking. And right, so I'll try and do it blow by blow, and it won't be terribly in depth, but oh god, I'll just try and give my honest opinion about it, and it's not getting better. It really isn't. And so we'll start first of all with the interview that they had with the two actors and one actress who are going to be playing Isildur, Erlendale, and a new made up character who they fully admitted is made up and does not exist in canon, but by their own logic they're saying that it won't affect the existing canon, her being there, which kind of does when you know what part of family she's part of. And these actors are speaking about their roles, and the chap who plays Isildur, I believe his name's Maxim Baldry or something along those lines, is the name. That's about the closest I think I can remember to what his name actually is. But he was talking about Isildur's character and saying how he is an explorer and someone who wishes to be a ship's captain, and voices this idea that he is trying to find himself, which, forgive me if I'm wrong, and the era where this is supposed to, take place, it's obviously not set in any sort of real time, real life sort of timeline, but the whole basis of Tolkien's works around the Lord of the Rings and Middle Earth is that they replaced a lot of the mythology that was lost during medieval sort of Anglo-Saxon times, which would have come somewhere between the sort of, as far as I can think from the top of my head, is anywhere between the sort of 9th and sort of 14th century-ish, give or take maybe a few centuries, but yeah, that's the era that his work was supposed to cover, because of a lot of the mythology from that time period, from British history, that went missing due to just various factors, and finding themselves, it's a very modern trait, it's a very modern phrase. It's not something I would associate with that time period. I mean, I'm not denying that there would be people who would have be within certain structures, who would be within certain families, certain communities, who would have feelings and maybe notions of there being more. There might more than what their stature would allow, but and there would be people within other higher structures who would maybe have sort of ideas of like wanting to explore beyond what the borders of their own existence allowed. But for the most part, and for reason, you get from, especially this guy's an heir to a throne, so his duty, his knowledge that he was going to be king one day would be instilled into him from day one, and it would be the only thing he would be trained for, it would be the only thing that he would be conditioned for, and any sort of notions that he had of doing something outside of that calling, of that duty, would be stamped out of him. It's whether for good or bad, that is what would have happened. And to act like this guy would have some kind of wanderer spirit or whatever, or have some hippie-ish fucking whatever, is just pretty much untrue, or very much, and if it did exist, it was not very well documented. So yeah, I had a problem with that right away. Then the chap playing Elendil, who's Isildur's father and the reigning king at the time, he the actor who plays him, and I did recognise this guy, he's a British actor called Lloyd Owen, who has been on the UK acting scene for quite a long time. He's not hugely well known, again, as I've described in the past. He's that guy from that thing from whenever. He's that. So look, it's Thingy-my-bob from that thingy that we watched. That is the guy, the kind of actor he is. He was in a series that was quite popular in the UK, specifically in Scotland back in the 90s, called Monarch of the Glen, which is where I finally picked up on where I'd seen him from. So that was a bit of a that's who that is. But that's by the by. He said something again that was very interesting, where he said that they're taking these characters and fleshing them out in a way that Tolkien didn't. And again, it's like, all right, so that's also not true, because the characters like Elendil and Isildur were established within the lore, and they did have a level of fleshing out and material such as the appendices, and if you look for them, you can find it in the appendices and in the Silmarillion to a point as well. Not that I remember a great deal of detail about it, but I've read the Silmarillion more than once, and the appendices, I'll admit, I've only sort of screen read a couple of times, but they're not even that in depth either. But there is information about these guys if you look for it, and it's like, so they were fleshed out. And even if it was an argument that they said that they weren't fleshed out enough and these guys are just doing it more for the sake of this show, then it's like, well, that's also dishonest, because it's like, Tolkien, as anyone would know, who, when you've read, he writes everything exactly the way he intends to write it. If he didn't want to flesh out a character further, then there would have been a reason for that only he knows, and it would have been enough for him to say so, and that should be left there. So I didn't like that phrasing of what he said, that it's as if to say that Tolkien wasn't particular enough, or he wasn't working in a complex enough writing style to be able to make these characters more fleshed out and interesting. It's like, that's just not bloody true, because he had the characters of the main stories that he intended to have fleshed out further than some of the secondary and lesser players of the lore and of the universe. So everything was as it was intended to be according to his method, and I just don't appreciate that phrasing. They don't give a shit what I think, but I mean, I'm going to tell you anyway, so fuck it. So they move on next to the two girls who are playing the Harfoots, which in most descriptions as you've seen it so far, they're very particularly mentioned as Harfoots, but there's no mentions of what they actually are, which we know they are, as they're a breed of hobbits. Although she does, one of the girls, I think she's playing Nori Brandyfoot, who's going to be one of the main protagonists of the show by the looks of things, does refer to them as hobbits at one point, and that raised an eyebrow because I was like, I wonder if there's maybe some reason why they're not, and I'm not the first to say this as well, so I'm not going to lay claim to this idea, but I think they might have some kind of rights issue where they're not allowed to call them hobbits because they're everything is seems to be going out of the way to refer to them as Harfoots rather than hobbits. But they're very obvious to everyone that they're hobbits, and it's also been speculated that they were put in, even though there's no real evidence from the appendices that there was a lot of hobbit presence in Middle-earth at the time. It looks like the screenwriters, the creators of the show, were encouraged to put them in there because it would be a way to get a bigger audience involved. So because if they see hobbits, they go, oh, Lord of the Rings, therefore they're more likely to watch it. So there wasn't a great deal I got from that one. It was all just a bit of like, talking about the studio and talking about, the setup and how they were so surprised that there was so much actual, physical space around them that they were filming in rather than green screen, which, fair enough. I mean, if that's the case, then well done them, because, I mean, quite frankly, I think we're all sick of green screen CGI thanks to the absolute saturation of it from the superhero movies and just most movies of the recent sort of past, from the last 10 years or so. We've had a fill of green screen, I think. So if it's true, then fair enough. But there's contradicted slightly when you've seen some of the footage I've seen and from the trailers and stuff. There does seem to be a little bit of reliance on CGI. But only for, I guess, for things where they really need it, like for dragons and monsters, and like when you see Durin's Bane, the Balrog, that's not something you could be easily recreated, but with physical effects. So fair one with that. But the only pickup I really had from what she said was that, but then what goes on, and the next two things I'm going to latch on to are very closely related, and this is where I started to throw my hands up and go, right, no, this isn't what we're going to get. We're not going to get Tolkien as we know it. This is just going to be, not that I didn't know that anyway, but this was a final, like, throw my hands in the air and like, no, this isn't what we're getting. The quote from, I completely ditched it from my brain because there's the other girl who I think plays the sidekick of Nori Brandyfoot. A direct quote from her within the interview said that in response to a question about is there going to be more women who are going to be the centre and focus of this show and are going to take a much more of a primary role in the story, and her response was, "We're here," and I think that says it all. And also a direct quote from one of the executives of the show, in a response to a similar question, said that they wanted the work to reflect what the world actually looks like. And to that I just went, again, this tied into what I said before about when this was set. It's like, you're so up your own arse and so narcissistic that you think that everything needs to look like the way things are now. This wasn't made to look like now. It was made to look like an era that Tolkien specifically created this work for. It said that you're so fucking egotistical that you think everything needs to look the way you think and the way what you see, and how you if you see something you don't think has enough representation or diversity in, that it needs to be inserted in there because you say so. And not to the betterment of the story, not to expand on it, not to improve it, just to be there for the sake of it, even though they are claiming that this is going to be an interpretation and not an outright admission of it, but they do think they're improving on his work, which is just downright fucking hubris in my opinion, because it really pissed me off. But we move on, while I'm on that mood, to the final part of the interviews that I read and watched, which was the interview with the lady playing Princess Disa, who's playing the black dwarf princess Nisa. Sofia Nomvete is her name, and her particular interview is so eye-opening at this point. If you still have faith that this is going to be a faithful interpretation of anything that Tolkien had in mind, then I've got a bridge to sell you, because I'm done. She uses a lot of the language that you think she's going to use. She says this. She actually calls her character a dwarf of color, which I think reduced many of the fandom to tears of laughter, because it's like, did you ever think you were going to hear a phrase like that ever? I don't mind any and I'd want to stipulate that, because again, this is going to get pinned on me and people like me, that we're just, because we don't like this and we don't like what we're seeing, that we're racist, that we're sexist, that we're all the is and the phobe words, right? But all we want is faithfulness to the lore. And we're not seeing any signs of that at the moment from anything that's come out of the mouths of these people. And from that standpoint, the two things that stood out from this particular person's interview was that when they're not changing any of the work, but they're interpreting the work of Tolkien. I was like, newsflash, bitch! Change and interpret pretty much mean the same fucking thing. It was like they're doing this deliberately to confuse and throw you off the scent and go, no, we're not actually doing this what we think you're doing, we're actually doing this instead, you're gonna love it. No no, I'm not. It's like, I'm gonna try, but I don't have much faith. But the big one that got out of my way, and it feeds into the things I just said about what those previous twats said about reflecting what the world actually looks like, and we're here. This same woman says that the being part of this redressing of the balance of this world, of this universe, is an honour. And at this point, that all these things adding up to what they are basically these people stopping short of saying that J.R.R. Tolkien was wrong, that he was racist, that he was sexist, that he was a bigot, and that his work should be forgotten and our work should be what you remember instead. Don't believe what you see with your ears and eyes. His works were bigoted. This stuff that we're making is going to be an improvement, and we're going to change the mistakes of the past. To which I say, fuck off. I am not having it in any way, shape or form. If this is how you're going to take this thing forward, if this is how you're going to take this universe forward, then I want no bloody part of it. The only reason I'm going to watch this at this point is to watch and laugh at the absolute car crash that this bloody thing's going to be. Oh, God. And, this is not the attitude I ever want to take towards anything, but everything I've seen up until this point is not giving me any kind of confidence that this is going to be anywhere near any good or faithful or any kind of respectful to Professor Tolkien's work. So, no, get it up here. I'm not going to be any part of this. Oh, God. Okay, I got that out of my system. And I know that goes against what I said in my previous video, where I said I've gone through something similar to a grieving process, where I've gone from being confused to angry to indifferent to basically just laughing at everything that I've seen so far. And that was easy to do from the previous stuff, like the Entertainment Weekly covers and stuff that I covered in the last video. But this one just did ingrained a tiny little bit of rage again, just to hear some of the stuff that was coming out of these people's mouths. And I'm not saying every single one of them were being insulting or they were being, having this kind of tone towards it, but everything just did have this one line about, how things are going to be fleshed out, changed, redress in the balance. All the language was laced through all this, and it was really hard not to notice once you picked it up. So I'm sorry if I'm being a bit of a Debbie Downer, but I don't know what to tell you. This did not fill me with any kind of confidence or any kind of hope whatsoever. So yeah, this is going to be a disaster. I never wanted to say that in any of the videos I made, but here we are. Fuck it, might as well jump on the bandwagon, huh? Okay, I'll leave my little rant at that, shall I? Thanks very much for watching, everyone. If you've made it this far, thank you for getting to the end. If you liked what you saw, please give me a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Leave a comment if you feel the same way, if you share my view, or even if you don't and you want to give some kind of, some sort of rebuttal, even albeit respectful. Please don't be mean to me. Oh, you know what? I don't really care. You can do what you want. I don't give a shit. Anyway, yeah, leave a comment if you want. Just tell me what you think. Share this with everyone if you've got any, again, Tolkien fans who are still clinging on to any ideas that this is going to be anywhere near good. And then give them a little look at this. Share some of the other YouTubers who are covering this stuff way better than I am and doing a much better job than I am too. So that would be awesome. I'll leave it there, guys. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.